Welcome, friends, to Crazy as Usual with Donna. And today, Donna is with Dr. Cristi Bundukamara. I'm really proud of myself for being able to pronounce that. Do I get an honorary PhD?
Yes.
She's a psychiatric nurse practitioner, former Army medic, and she's done some pretty impressive things. At a pivotal point in her life, she actually got a master's in psychiatric nursing and then a doctorate in health education, and went on to form Mentally Strong, an organization that advocates for mental health. And she's going to talk more about that in the Mentally Strong Academy. And Christy, I love what you said that the letters behind your name don't necessarily qualify you to do the
Yeah.
work that you do, but you have
Mhm.
taken tragedy in your life and turned it into healing for hundreds of people. Not only did you form Mentally Strong, but you're now speaking to audiences around the world. So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about what inspired you to start this track.
I never actually thought I would be an entrepreneur. I was always a really good employee. I
Hmm.
went to be a psychiatric nurse practitioner. At the same time, I was adopting five children from the foster care system in Miami. And I graduated. I kind of had a little bit of ignorance about me or pride to say, I can raise these kids. I know how to deal with PTSD. I know how to deal with reactive attachment disorder. And it's much different when you bring them into your home. So I adopted five kids, ages 9, 10, 12, 14, and 16, and three of which had significant sexual and physical trauma, not from their families, but in the foster care system. They had been in the foster care system since they were very young.
Right.
But I have this psychiatric nurse practitioner. My husband has a doctorate in special education. I was working on my doctorate at the time. We thought we can do this, you know, and we finished the adoption. We were kind of settling in as a family. Things were starting to um, show their colors as far as the PTSD and reactive attachment, but we felt like we had a handle on it.
Hmm.
In July of 2005, one of my adopted sons died in a drowning accident on our family vacation. And I had promised these kids that they were now safe.
Yeah.
And three of them were a sibling group. And so now their biological brother had just passed away. And it didn't stop there. I had a very strong faith. We had a church community that we felt like we could lean on, and I didn't really take the time to grieve because I've got six kids. I'm raising six kids, but I really tried to focus on my two daughters, which were his biological sisters. But a year after Johnny passed away in that drowning accident, my son Reggie, my biological son, started having catastrophic epilepsy. Like the seizures would not stop. And we had been to multiple doctors. No one could figure out what was going on or why. It took them 2 years to finally diagnose something called DRPLA, which is a very rare neurodegenerative condition. And they basically said he wouldn't live into adulthood and that
Hmm.
there was nothing we could do for his seizures. So
Wow.
here I was navigating grief, and now I've got, this trauma after trauma,
Yeah.
the medical trauma of him in and out of the ICU, them telling me that he's dying, that, there's nothing they can do. And just, I would travel around the world. I've been to Mexico for stem cells, Canada for some of the best doctors, Japan, UK. We went everywhere trying to find someone that could treat this very ultra rare disorder. We actually moved. That's how we moved to Colorado. We moved to
Yeah.
Colorado in the 2013 movement, where there was a lot of families with catastrophic epilepsy coming for what they call Charlotte's Web, which is a non-psychoactive cannabis oil, and it was only legal here. It's now legal everywhere, but at that time it was only legal here, and so we packed up our family and moved here. And unfortunately, my son passed away in 2016.
Mhm.
And so my life prior to 2016 was self-preservation, taking care of myself. Like how, practically, how do you do that under this constant repeated trauma?
Yeah.
And I did continue working, um, but that was my focus. And when he passed away, I knew that I had to, like, it had to mean something.
Right.
And that's when a year later, I opened Mentally Strong. I got the Mentally Strong method down on paper. This is what I was using during that 12 years to take care of myself. And, it just grew from there.
Right.
We've served over 7,000 patients at the clinic. We have over 150,000 views on the YouTube channel where I teach about grief. But the biggest shock for me, you would think after losing two children, God would put some sort of protection around me. Um, my other biological child, Maya, died in her sleep from sudden
Mm.
unexpected death and epilepsy at age 21. And
Wow.
although she had the same genetic disorder, she was not sick. There was not that medical trauma. There was not that, I always say, if God were to say, "Do you want Reggie back the way that he was?" I would not do that to him, right? He was in pain, he was suffering.
Right.
My daughter was so happy.
Mm.
And, you know, and that really uh that has been my hardest grief is
Yeah.
my daughter. And it's only been 2 years, and I do not minimize the reality that I'm still actively grieving.
Yeah.
We're coming up out with a grief documentary where I get raw and vulnerable. Um, you know, punching bags, crying, like ugly crying. This is cute crying, when you're acting
Yeah.
professional and
I
you're
know
kind
what
of
ugly
holding it
crying looks
in.
like too.
Um, and so we're coming out with a grief documentary and on May 5th, and just really like, how do you grieve? Confronting grief. We don't talk about it. And, unfortunately, I'm an expert in grief, and
Yeah.
um, I have had to battle depression. I tell people I was depressed before I had a reason to be depressed. Now I have a significant reason to
Yeah.
be depressed, but I have
Hmm.
struggled since I was a young girl, with a lot of things that I think women struggle with, around, appearance and self worth and,
Yeah.
these things. And I now know, I'm 50, and I realize I'm actually pretty smart. I'm pretty, I, you know, and so just being able to really talk about, and that's why I love what you're doing here, and, what your whole book is about, of like being able to control these thoughts that we
Right.
all have.
Right.
And let's start talking about it, because, when I do the Mentally Strong method on people, almost everyone has a thought of they're not good enough. Almost everyone
Yeah.
that I've mapped has that. And it's like, when you think you're the only one, you're not. We all have that thought. That is a very common thought, especially in women.
Yeah. Somebody wants to keep us believing that we're the only one.
Mm,
And
right.
I believe strongly that there's kind of a thief out there to kill, steal, and destroy the truth. And
Hmm.
we have to take our ground back. And
Yeah.
you're doing daily work now to help people do that. Tell me about the foundation of Mentally Strong, how it evolved, and what has it expanded to? Who do you serve right now?
So when I first started, I've always wanted to, like, turn my pain into purpose. And that is, the title of my book, but also like teaching mental strength. And I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and people are struggling with mental health issues. So I was like, well, I'm just going to start my own clinic and start teaching the Mentally Strong method as a type of counseling where you can actually learn to take care of yourself. So we really try to empower. Um, I've been a psychiatric nurse practitioner for over 20 years, and I get a lot of, I'll ask, well, what are you talking about with your therapist? Oh, I don't know. We just talk. And I know that even with therapists I know that are doing a good job, that know cognitive behavioral techniques, we're not actually wording it in a way that's empowering to people. Like, they can actually learn to do this themselves. And so I like people to kind of shy away from the word talk therapy, because we really, talking should be with our friends, our coworkers, our family. Those are our connections. When we are trying to grow in our mental health, we should be empowered.
Mhm.
And so we are using the Mentally Strong method at the clinic in Colorado Springs. We've got two licensee locations starting, one in Parker and one in Mesa, Arizona. And so I have a national
Nice.
vision for Mentally Strong, but my passion is actually teaching and speaking and getting, we talk about mental strength being an attribute that we respect in people, but we don't teach it anywhere.
Right.
And so I have, of course, raising mentally strong kids, and like we should just start teaching it before there's even a clinical diagnosis. We all experience
Right.
times of depression and anxiety, everyone.
Right.
And statistics show like 1 in 5 people in the US meet criteria for major depressive disorder or generalized anxiety disorder.
Right.
That is
Right.
a lot of people who are struggling.
It's it's enlightening, amazing, a little bit jostling just to know how many people struggle. I know as someone who has struggled with depression for most of my years that um I'm glad that I'm not alone. And I'm glad to know that there are other people who experience it and are in the process of figuring it out. And to know that it's okay to not be okay. I think you needed to know that in the depth of your trauma. We
Yeah.
need to know that it's fine and necessary to grieve, and we can't just snap out of it. It's not
Right.
healthy to just get over it, which is really what we heard for a generation. Um,
Mhm.
are you seeing a big shift in our ability to hold conversation around what's going on between the ears?
I think that unfortunately in our culture, people think in black and white, right?
Hmm.
All or nothing. And, we see this in politics, we see this in medicine, we have anti-pharmaceuticals and then people who, think that it's all a disease and it's all neurochemical, right? And so, but the reality is it's a balance.
Yeah.
What came first, the chicken or the egg? It doesn't matter. Now you have these symptoms, and yes, stress and things that have happened in your life contribute to that depression and anxiety,
Mhm.
and not having the tools to adequately process it. And you can actually create a neurochemical problem from the stress,
Right.
or there could be a predisposition to that neurochemical problem. And, stress contributes to that as well. So, but it's more of a continuum. And I still see a lot of black and white thinking. That's what we try to do it very differently. I try to talk when I'm speaking nationally. You know, Statistics say 1 in 5 people in that room are on an antidepressant, right?
Hmm.
And there's so many people, and I follow them, a lot of self-help gurus that, there's too many people on antidepressants. This is bad. We should be doing it with this, and this. And there's some truth to that. And I personally try to grow in
Hmm.
those areas, right? But when you're in the midst of raising your kids, you also, have chosen or have to work, right?
Hmm.
And and then you're experiencing this depression. Maybe there's other contributing factors. And
Yeah.
then you're supposed to just, oh, I'm going to just eat right and exercise and take these supplements, and then I'm no longer going to be depressed, right? Like it took you 10 years to get to that point,
Hmm.
medication to help you during that
Right.
time. And so unfortunately, you and I are rarities in being able to speak of the balance
Yeah.
that both are true. Well, in psychiatry, we call it dialectical thinking. Both is
Hmm.
true. So, for example, when you talk about grief, I will never get over the fact that my daughter died while she was healthy. Like that is an absolute truth for me. But also a truth for me is that I know that she did not want to end up like her brother. And that was the way in which her life was going to go. I mean, we thought it was like 10 years from there, but it's still, both of those are true, but they seem to
Mm.
be opposite. And people have a hard time believing, opposite truths. So, for example, depression, anxiety are biology problems that are definitely on a rise. Has it does have to do with our diet. It does have to do with environmental toxins. It does have to do with some of those things. But the pharmaceutical industry is not the devil, which you hear people speak of them as if they are. I truly believe that everyone is trying to do what they believe is right and good.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of all or nothing thinking and not real balanced approach to truly helping people.
Yeah. Very well said. And I'll have to admit, as much as, I mean, anyone who's read the book knows I talk about
Hmm.
this neuro RX, the 5 things you can do to try to stay ahead of that. But I was
Hmm.
also on antidepressants years ago, and I have friends and family members on antidepressants.
Yeah,
I can say that it really does get you to a place where you can do the work. You have
yeah,
to be in a mental place where you
yeah.
can do the work.
And I
So if
love
you,
that you're vulnerable enough and real enough to be able to say that. Like,
yeah,
yes, I have been in a place in my life where I took antidepressants. But, and how many years did it take you to really feel like you could do it without them?
I think I was on for about a year and a half.
Okay.
And there were also times when it would dip again, and I'd think maybe I need an antidepressant. But I also
Mhm.
found that when I'm really kept to that neuro RX, the 5 things, um, for the most part, it helped me get into a place where I could do the work. And
Yeah.
combination of that and just I'm a voracious learner, can't get enough. But
Yeah,
when
I
you're
am too.
yeah talking about I do I get therapy from several different sources because I create conversation groups. I
Mhm.
consume books and podcasts. Reading your book makes me feel like I'm inside part of your family.
Yeah.
And I listen to podcasts, and there are certain podcasters that I feel like should know my name if they see me on the street. They won't,
Mhm.
because I'm just a constant learner. But what would you say for somebody who has never been in a family where mental health or therapy is discussed? They feel that they're experiencing some lack of mental strength and they're not sure where to go. Um, if what would be the route that you send them on?
I think my line of you absolutely need to go see a professional is if you're thinking about hurting yourself or someone else, right? Suicidal
Mhm,
thoughts, cutting, um, those are lines that you need to seek professional help. Then there's a gray area kind of before that is like, you're depressed, you're anxious, it's impeding your function, but, maybe you want to try to do it on your own, or um, it sounds like your book has 5 amazing, uh, very practical things that people can do. Uh, my YouTube channel has lots of kind of psychosocial, um, practical things that we can do in moving through grief and trauma and just
mhm,
other barriers to mental strength.
mhm.
But what I tell people, when you are trying your hardest with the resources that you currently have and you're not making progress, it's time to seek help, right?
Yeah,
So that gray area should only be for a limited time
yeah,
of trying to do it yourself. And, but then you can do the combination like you did, right? The antidepressant, gets you to a place where you can start doing the work.
yeah.
And professional help does not always mean antidepressants. It could just be, a specific, professional type of therapy. And I agree it's hard to navigate. Here in Colorado Springs, I think I can give, specifics. Our clinic is open. We have walk-ins. There's Diversis, which is the community mental health.
Mhm,
Um, there is for substance abuse, we send people to Achieve Whole Recovery. there's, I feel like we have a resource page on our website where it gives the organizations locally that we support. But, when it
Mhm.
comes to nationally, every city is different. It is, unfortunately, you can't tell uh, how good a practitioner is by the
Mhm.
letters behind their name. I know a lot of people that have the same letters behind their name as I do, and I would not send a family member to them.
Mhm.
Um, there's, counselors that I think that are licensed counselors that I can tell haven't done the personal work. So somebody
Yeah.
can't take you where they haven't gone, right? If they're
Right.
not doing the work, they're not able to take you there. And so I think that is one of the problems in mental health in general is that the standard, is not just academic. It's not just what you've done, the academics that you've completed. If you went to a cardiologist, you really don't care if he's a hot mess at home, right? As long as he's a good cardiologist,
He knows what
you
he's
know?
doing.
But you go to a psychiatrist and they're making right decisions and their life is a hot mess and they're giving you advice. Like it is and I don't know how to really standardize that except for starting to talk about it, right? We
Hmm.
all, when I teach my staff and we also train other outpatient mental health facility staff, I start with self. Before we even go over policies and procedures, how do you take care of yourself? And,
Right.
our course is a 4-day course. And every morning for 2 hours, we're learning the mentally strong method for
Okay.
taking care of ourselves. Not, you can't help anybody until you are on that journey. And we don't
Can't
have to
pour
be on the
from an
same.
empty pitcher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
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 But we do have to be doing that self work to really be effective in mental health.
I talk about the time that I walked out of a friend's office and walked right into a wall. I knew that was a one clear sign that I was approaching a level of burnout that was going to impact my performance. But it took a while for me to actually start to seek help. I just kept pressing on to be extraordinary. What would you suggest if somebody sees somebody at work who is very evidently at risk? I even have a friend who observed me in a panic attack more than once,
Mm,
and he wasn't sure what to do. So, what is something that we can do if we spot a coworker at risk before they spin out of control?
yeah. I think get rid of the fear of getting involved. I, there's this fear around mental health.
Yeah.
One, for us that are experiencing it to share it. And two, if my coworker shares it, I'm not a therapist. I don't know what to do with it, right?
Mhm.
Again, if we're all on a mental health journey and we're all on one, whether you acknowledge it and working on it or not, right?
Right.
Um, you know, the first thing I tell people is like know how to take care of yourself. But when you see something like that, connection. I'm actually reading a book right now that talks about depression, disconnection being the cause of depression,
Yeah.
and reconnection being one of the antidepressants.
Yeah.
And so when we have this fear of someone else's mental health, then we're creating a disconnect,
Hmm.
which ultimately doesn't help them, right? So
Right.
connect however you can, um, and be honest with, what, I don't, I don't know if I'm saying the right things to you, but I want to be here for you.
Hmm.
You know, you think you need professional help. What can I do for you? Just think the word connection. Like, how can I connect with this person? And connection starts with being honest and vulnerable that maybe don't know what to say or don't know what to do.
Absolutely. But um, to the word connection, it could be useful to connect them with other resources. I think of the
Yeah.
number of smaller businesses that just don't have the bandwidth to create a wellness program, let alone a mental health
Oh,
program.
right.
What would be some ways that a small company or an HR department can actually equip their employees to be able to connect people with real solutions without having to even raise it to HR? Sometimes people will
Right.
just clam up if you start talking about going to HR because they think it's going to go on their record or something. So
Yeah.
what could we do?
Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but the owner of that company and the leadership needs to be aware of their own mental health journey, right?
Mhm.
There's this fear around it, and then it's like, well, I'm not capable of, helping someone with a mental health condition, so I don't even want to ask. Or and so it starts with the leadership being self-aware and beginning that self-work and being open and honest and vulnerable around that. And then
Yeah.
of course always have, professional resources available
Hmm.
wherever your community is, and know what those are and when the hours are and that kind of stuff. But it really, what's going to help the company is that connection and
Yeah.
them feeling like you care about what's going on in their life. And on the opposite, and I think, we talked about this in the panel discussion, there's also this fear of dependency and drama, and then they're going to always bring this to work, and then it's always kind of uh, needing to care for them. And again, if we're doing our own self work and we can kind of put professional employment boundaries at the same time of being caring. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we don't think we can do both, and we can. It's not easy. I only have 39 employees, and and I take things very personal when they complain about something or they're not
Uh,
happy. I feel like I'm not good enough, right? Remember we talked about that
you still have
negative
monkeys, Cristi?
self-talk. Yes. And I've been working on myself for 20 years and I still have monkeys, right? It's
Oh.
it's about getting control of them. And I've had patients tell me control is a trigger word for me. Don't use that word. And I challenge them to reframe that, because you don't like the word control because someone else has probably had control over you in the past,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And that that you have a right and even a responsibility to feel that control over
Hmm.
yourself.
Someone once used the word harness, like you harness a horse so you can ride it, and you ride it for
Yes.
your purpose, and you're
Yes.
not being taken somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
Love
we're
it.
getting to the end of our time. What are the last few thoughts you want to leave somebody who might be driving into the workplace today?
Well, actually, I would like you to, I'm sure your readers have heard it before, but share your five RXs um, with them.
Okay. It's sleep, eat real food,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what it is. I don't have to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Practice gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
get your heart rate up. I don't like to use the word exercise because it kind of creates this picture of having to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Walking is good for people my age. There are different ways to get exercise, even dancing. So exercising, and sometimes you can combine that with the fifth one, which is spending time with friends, really learning to play. So
Yeah.
going dancing with some girlfriends is uh, getting killing two birds with one stone.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And connection so important. And I'm so glad that you put sleep first. It is something
Mm.
that we do not prioritize in our culture, but all of the research says that if if you only have time for one thing, it's to get enough sleep.
Yep. It's the first thing I do when I'm feeling out of control or I feel like I'm kind of slipping mentally. I'll get rest and I'll decide I will tackle this after I've gotten rest. And it always
Yes,
changes things. Well, I'm
yes,
sorry that we ran out of time, but I'm so glad that you took the time to spend with us today.
yes. Thank you
And
so much.
yeah, friends, if you are new to Crazy as Usual, you can find the show notes with more details on Dr. Cristi Bundukamara on LinkedIn on my Crazy as Usual newsletter. And I'll also post a link to this interview on Instagram. So go live your life crazy, brilliant, and free. We'll be with you.